The day after I woke up and told my wife, why did I do that? I don't know. I just don't know what the hell goes on. I remember one thing, I had a very hard moment in that part of my life, but I assure you in that age, I could have put that clown in the first round, but I sold my soul and I'm ashamed of it.
Is it true that you made $170 million from this fight?
I made a lot of money, the most money I've made ever.
60 million households, Jake.
250 million people.
Bro, that is so
It's all downhill
crazy.
from here.
No, for sure.
I peaked.
How do you think the Jake Paul Anthony Joshua fight plays out?
I don't know. I want to make sure. I believe it once I see him in the ring.
If Paul starts his boxing career earlier, could Jake Paul have been a champion?
Look, Anthony Joshua didn't just beat Jake Paul down, he shattered an entire fantasy world and made Mike Tyson sit there and face the fact that he picked a paycheck over his legacy. Boxing just got exposed in a way that can't be undone.
I'm gonna tell y'all the truth. I told y'all, they made Mike Tyson retract his statement on Twitter. They made him rewrite a post on top of deleting a post. Yeah, I told you that fight between Mike Tyson and Jake Paul was rigged. I told you that. I don't care what Mike Tyson is saying now, he have to do that to secure his money. He's still an investment for future exhibitions.
This whole thing feels unreal when you break it down. To get why this matters so much, you need to understand something crucial. What we watched wasn't actually a fight, it was a slow burn betrayal that finally exploded when a genuine heavyweight met a celebrity, and reality snapped back into place.
Sit down on a podcast one time, and he talked about it. He said, I don't want to do an exhibition against Floyd Mayweather. Yeah. He said, I'm only doing real fights. Now, of course, I can't get up high in weight, but I'll fight him in a real fight at the weight that I'm at. But Jake Paul, I mean, as of right now, for what he's doing, it's good for what he's doing. But once he fights a real fighter, it's going to be bad.
That ringside shot of Tyson watching Joshua tear Paul apart still gets to me, because what I saw on his face wasn't surprise or happiness. It was that sick recognition mixed with pure regret, the kind that hits your gut when you watch someone else do exactly what you got paid to hold back. Every instinct in Tyson's body was screaming at him, and if you can't see how that messed with his head, you're fooling yourself. Here's what makes this so uncomfortable to think about. Tyson could have finished Jake Paul any moment he chose to, and everyone there knew it. Jake knew it too. That's exactly why this Joshua knockout cuts so deep. It proves the whole ceiling was manufactured, and the real threat was always sitting right there. Once that truth gets out, there's no stuffing it back in the bottle, no matter how many damage control statements get released. The second Joshua put Paul on the canvas in round 5, everything split open. Suddenly, every previous fight started getting picked apart under a microscope, and I swear you could actually feel viewers mentally rewinding to that Tyson match, all asking that same dangerous question simultaneously. How come he didn't do what Joshua just did? Why didn't he pull that trigger? What made this one feel so different? Once those thoughts start spinning, they never really stop.
Eddie, I want to follow with you because when this fight was first announced, you had said something to the effect of this would end Jake Paul's career. After what you saw tonight, do you think that Jake should continue to box, or what do you think the future holds for him?
Yeah, look, I really take my hat off. So, I mean, we have to see if it is a broken jaw. Those injuries are very difficult to come back from. But as AJ said, like that last shot would have knocked out a lot of heavyweights. And I know he went down heavy, but, you know, he was conscious on the floor. And I thought his game plan, although obviously very negative early on, which it had to be.
Now, everyone keeps saying this was a mismatch, but that word's way too simple for what actually went down. This was pure exposure. This was physics taking back control after years of being suspended, and Joshua wasn't in any rush about it. He stalked it, which makes the whole thing terrifying to watch. When a legitimate fighter takes his sweet time, it means he already knows how this story ends, and Jake could feel that certainty closing in on him with every round. Then round 6 hit like a final judgment, and I'm not talking about just the punch, I'm talking about what it meant. That right hand didn't just crack a jaw, it cracked the permission structure. Permission for this whole experiment to keep masquerading as real boxing. Once titanium plates become part of the conversation, the laughing stops immediately, and anyone still making jokes is either completely numb or straight up lying. What gives me chills is Eddie Hearn's comment about giving Jake his debut and AJ handing him his retirement party. That wasn't just trash talk. That was a eulogy, and promoters don't speak like that unless they genuinely believe the book is closing. If you think Jake wasn't replaying those words while staring at those hospital ceiling tiles, you're missing the mental destruction completely.
Are you in pain?
Yeah, but
Does it hurt?
it's not from like talking.
Coming back to Tyson, he played it smart and kept his tongue in check and his hands quiet. No, it was incredibly one-sided, like watching a grown man fight a 5-year-old. But Joshua ripping things apart creates this brutal side-by-side comparison. One fighter followed the script, another torched it completely, and history only gives credit to one of those decisions, regardless of how massive the paycheck was. I don't care how many people want to call this conspiracy theory material, because Tyson cracked that door open himself when he admitted he doesn't even remember the fight and woke up wondering why he went through with it. That's not someone talking who feels good about what happened. That's someone who knows they abandoned something sacred, and that kind of regret gets louder as time passes, not quieter. Let me spell this out clearly because it's important. Joshua didn't need to run his mouth after the fight ended, because his hands did all the talking and the silence backed it up completely. When silence becomes the loudest sound in the room, it means the truth is too clear to spin away, and every influencer boxer watching just felt their stomach hit the floor, whether they want to admit it or not.
Feels like
4 titanium plates.
4 titanium plates. How many do you have?
Just 1.
What's it feel like having your jaw wired shut? Because you've basically got a baseball shoved in there. 2 titanium plates, it's just brutal.
Oh no, I don't remember the fight that much. I kind of blanked out a little. Listen, know what I remember? Coming back from the first round, and then the next day I remember Jacob doing some kind of, I don't know, what was he doing at the ring?
Oh yeah, a little bow at the end, he bowed.
And that's the last thing I remember. You know, but the day after the fight, right after the day after, I woke up and told my wife, why did I do that? You know, I don't know. I just don't know what the hell goes on.
That opens up a much darker conversation that nobody wants to have yet because it threatens the entire business model. If one legitimate heavyweight can unravel years of buildup in 6 rounds, then how flimsy was this whole ecosystem from the start? If that question makes you uncomfortable, it should, because someone is definitely in panic mode behind the scenes right now trying to control what this all means.
Just hoping after this Floyd fight, maybe we can have a rematch. He did well, but I want to try it again.
Is that something that you would be interested in terms of righting the wrong and knocking him out?
What did you think about Jake's power when you felt it firsthand? I keep coming back to Tyson watching that shattered jaw footage because human biology doesn't negotiate and marketing departments can't debate with bone fractures. Seeing actual proof of what a real punch accomplishes forces you to face every single moment you decided not to throw one. No way this isn't eating at him, way harder than he's showing. Here's a thought that should worry everyone. If Tyson is now openly saying that money controlled the outcomes, how many other fights are about to get questioned by the public? Because once trust erodes, it spreads like wildfire, and boxing has always run on belief, and that belief is hemorrhaging right now. Something else that won't stop bothering me is how relaxed Joshua looked throughout the entire thing. Relaxed fighters are the most dangerous and the most genuine, and his composure felt like someone fixing a mistake, not hunting for glory. Corrections don't stop with one target though. They ripple outward, so you might want to ask yourself who's feeling vulnerable next. This doesn't wrap up with a knockout compilation or a press conference soundbite, because the quiet that followed feels orchestrated. When things go silent this abruptly, it usually means contracts are getting rewritten and stories are getting buried, and I don't buy it for 1 second. This situation is still developing and something much uglier is definitely coming, and when it surfaces, it's going to make this knockout look like just the opening shot. What keeps replaying in my mind is how predictable this all seems looking back. Like the sport finally got sick of the charade and decided to snap the elastic band back where it belongs. For years, that line between entertainment and actual competition got stretched so thin it was practically begging to snap. and Joshua just happened to be standing there when it finally gave way. I keep thinking about how confidence slides into arrogance without anyone catching the exact moment it tips over, because that's what killed this whole thing. Not the ambition, not the money, but the delusion that reality could be bargained with if you talked loud enough and gathered a big enough crowd around you. There's something deeply disturbing about watching a story fall apart in real time, because it shows how much of what we consume as fans runs on trust, and once that trust fractures, you start second guessing everything in hindsight, like how many moments you got excited about were genuine and how many were carefully padded corners to guarantee an outcome. Joshua didn't just win a bout, he brought consequences back, and that's what people aren't fully absorbing yet. Consequences don't go viral well, but they stick around and they haunt fighters long after the cameras pack up and the social media storm dies down. I can't get past the contrast between preparation and promotion, because one happens in silence and the other needs noise to exist, and when they finally crash into each other, silence always wins. Not dramatically, not loudly, just definitively, like gravity reminding you it was never impressed by the hype. What really gets under my skin is how normal it became to treat legitimate fighters like plot obstacles instead of human beings with decades of experience and damage written into their reflexes. Once you reduce them to story elements, you forget they can end your evening with one clean choice. There's also something sad about realizing that even legends aren't bulletproof against the system, that even someone like Tyson can get pulled into the orbit of spectacle and cash, because it shows how powerful the machine has become and how difficult it is to step away once you're caught in it. I don't think people truly understand how uncommon it is to witness a moment that rewrites the emotional pecking order of a sport, where suddenly the loudest voices fall silent and only the quiet professionals are left standing with their credibility intact. Every replay of that knockout feels weightier than the last, not because of the impact itself, but because of what it symbolizes. A boundary drawn between levels, a reminder that experience isn't just time logged but damage absorbed and lessons learned through pain. There's an irony in how chasing legitimacy ended up speeding up the loss of illusion, because pursuing real competition means eventually finding it, and real competition doesn't care about brand management, optics, or whether the timing works out. I keep wondering how many fighters watched that fight and felt two conflicting emotions simultaneously. Relief that the sport protected itself, and fear that the same spotlight could swing toward them if they ever miscalculate the distance between confidence and overconfidence. The aftermath matters more than the actual fight, because aftermath is where careers change direction, where managers reconsider, where matchmaking philosophy shifts, and where fans recalibrate what they're willing to believe the next time someone makes a big promise. There's also a lesson about patience here, because Joshua didn't rush to prove anything. He waited for the opening that was always going to appear, and that patience is something you only develop after years of getting punished for being impatient. What makes this stick with you is that it didn't seem vicious or over the top, it felt precise, which somehow makes it more devastating because there was no chaos to point to, just a systematic breakdown that left nowhere to assign blame except internally. I think the sport needed this reality check, even if it didn't want it, because without periodic wake-up calls, boxing risks floating too far into pure theater, and theater without genuine risk eventually becomes hollow, no matter how bright the spotlight gets. There's a quiet accounting happening now, not just for one fighter but for an entire philosophy of selling fights, because audiences might still love spectacle, but they just got reminded how much they value authenticity when it actually appears. I can't help but think this will alter how crossover gets discussed moving forward, because crossover suggests mutual respect between worlds, not one side borrowing credibility without fully paying for it. The mental damage might outlive the physical injuries, because once doubt creeps in at this level, it doesn't exit easily, and doubt is the one opponent you can't train away with workouts or money. What sticks with me most is how quickly admiration flips to scrutiny when the protection drops, because the same audience that buys into the dream will tear it apart ruthlessly once it collapses, and that swing is savage if you're not ready for it. There's no neat conclusion here, no moral lesson to wrap it up, just a feeling that something fundamental shifted and hasn't found its balance yet, like fault lines after an earthquake where the aftershocks are still rolling. And the most unsettling part is knowing this isn't the final act, because once the sport reveals a weakness this clearly, the next time it breaks through could be even louder, even messier, and way less merciful than what we just witnessed.